Hey guys, hope you're doing well. I've been posting a couple of quizzes. I don't know if some of you guys have seen it on my channel page, and one of them was about secondary dominance. It was the one that got entered most correctly, or the most wrong answers, yeah? So I thought, why not, let's do a video about it and see if I can just uncover a couple of things about it. So, secondary dominance, what is it? Now, in any key, whatever, you get one natural chord inside the key when you create sevens that is a dominant chord, yeah? Now, secondary dominance is something different. It gets confused a little bit. Some people don't actually know what the word means. So secondary dominant is creating a dominant of another chord. Now, how we'd see this written, right? One of the easiest ways to see it, what color do I need? Let's just line that there. So let's say we had a progression that was doing this. I'm not even gonna write chords, I'm just gonna write Roman numerals for chords. So let's say we had a 1 chord, major, right? Let's say we had a 4 chord, and a 5 chord, 1, 4, 5. Typical progression, right? Now, if we turned all those into 7th chords, what we would then get is we get a major 7, little triangle. We'd get a major 7, but our 5th chord of the key, of any major key, is gonna be that dominant 7th chord. Now, a dominant 7th chord has a formula of 1, 3, 5, and a flat 7. A major 7, for example, 1, 3, 5, 7. For example, if this was in, this say we did a C dominant 7th chord, major 7 would have the note C, E, G, B, but dominant 7th would have C, E, G, B flat. That's an important little, just a bit of background to understand about dominant chords, knowing their formula and where they sit within a key. So traditionally, and this is where I see a lot of people kind of, not get this wrong, because it's not wrong, but don't understand how it can be used in heaps of different ways, right? So let's take the traditional method where they actually do the dominant of the dominant, right? So let's do this. If I write up my progression again, I shouldn't have rubbed that out. Hey, that was a bit stupid. 1, 4, 5. We'll do the same process. We'll turn that into major 7. We'll turn that into major 7. We'll turn that into dominant 7th. Now, this chord, what we tend to see, back in classical days and Baroque days and stuff, commonly use the secondary dominance of the 5-7. So what we do here is I would write it up like this. We're going to go 5-7 of the 5-7 chord. So what does that mean? So let's say we did this in the key of C, right? Our chords are now going to be C major 7. Hopefully you can see that all right. Probably write it a bit small. We're going to get F major 7. Now, we would have had G7, which is G dominant 7th. So we're going to write this here, right? We'll do G7. What's this chord? What does that mean? So what it's telling you to do, it's telling you to do the dominant 7th of the dominant 7th that already exists. So we've got to think, okay, let's go 5 up from G, G, A, B, C, D. So if we do a D7 chord and then resolve it to a G7, then that's serving as our secondary dominant function. Let's do the secondary in a different color. Cool. Now, I just rewrote in the table, based on the Roman numerals there. So if we actually had this in a chord progression, what sometimes we'd see is we'd see the D7 be played following the G7. So what we get here is we get one chord that's actually out of the key, being the D7. Now, if we look at the notes in our key of C, we know that it's got no sharps or flats, hopefully. D7 though, if we look at those notes here, we're going to be left with this. F sharp, not in the key, right? But what is it in the key of? It's actually in the key of G, not G7, but in the key of G major. So secondary dominance is a really good modulation tool. If you do the 5th of the 5th, you actually get an opportunity to go to the next key in the circle of fifths. I'll jump on the keyboard or guitar in a second and give you a little whirl of that. But let's keep talking. So that's how secondary dominance is traditionally used, yeah? Now, it doesn't always have to be the 5-7 of the 5-7 chord. It could be anything, as long as it's the 5-7 of something, right? So let's get rid of this. Bear with me. Alright, so let's do a new progression. I'll do it the same method. Let's say we do a 1, let's do a minor 2 chord. Just doing them all diatonically in key for the moment. Let's do 6 chord, minor 6. And let's do our 7, right? Our dominant 7th chord. So let's suss this out. So these are all triads at the moment. I'm not even going to worry about putting the 7s in. I'll just put that in there because, you know, we're talking about dominant 7, so why not? That's where it naturally sits in the major key, just for a bit of background. Now, when we do this, sorry, the kitten's going crazy over there. When we do this, we've got major chord, minor chord, dominant 7th chord. So let's write them. We'll keep it in the key of C for now. So now we've got C, we've got D minor, we've got A minor, and then we've got G7. So that's our chords, well, that's our chord progression in that key. Let's do a secondary dominant of one of those chords. Could be anything, right? So let's just pick one, and we'll do this for a couple. Let's do the 2 chord. Now, if I write it up in the numerals first, yeah, I'll use the same color. Why not? What we're going to see is this 5/7 of the minor 2 chord. I know that's minor because it's lowercase 2 with the Roman numerals, if you didn't know that. So now that's the target chord, but what is the 5/7 of that? So I have to go, okay, so we've got D is the 1, so D, E, F, G, A. So if we play an A7 to a D minor, now we're doing a secondary dominant of D minor. Now, one thing to note is the D minor chord doesn't necessarily have to follow it. You know, rules are made to be broken. Our secondary dominant now is going to be A7. Righto? I could just do a secondary dominant and that's it. Never play the D minor. Just a different type of tool, yeah? Like I'm borrowing a chord from a different key there. But a lot of the time, and traditionally, you will see, should have written that smaller, say this was 1 bar, yeah? 1 chord per bar. You might get 1 chord, 1 chord, 1 chord, but the secondary dominant may have the A7 and then the D minor that follows, you know, over 2 beats. That one, and then back to there. So yeah, when we see those, you can do them off any chord. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be the 5/7 of the 5/7. Let's just do another one for good measure, yeah? And see if you can figure out in your head what I'm doing while I'm doing this, because it might be a bit clearer for you now. Gotta stop using so many colors, huh? I put the lids on the wrong colors and the pens too, and I don't know what's going on. Alright. So we're going to do the secondary dominant of the minor 6 chord. So we knew the 6 chord was A, I rubbed it out. So we've got to go, okay, 5 up from A, B, C, D, E. Turn that into a dominant 7th, we get E7, and that is our secondary dominant chord. So what we see now, I'll write this up again. Secondary dominant of the minor 6. So if we write up our chords there, go again. So A minor is our target. Look, here we go, having pen dramas. That's going to be our resolution, and we're just stepping out of key for a second. So if you need to, again, go A, B, C, D, E, turn that into E7. Cool. And then we get secondary dominant. Again, that chord's out of the key. It's there, out of there for a split second. It'll actually create interest and, you know, a bit of unique sound in the music. So that's enough on the board. Let me, should I use guitar or piano? I might use guitar today. I think I did piano last time. I'm going to jump on the guitar and I'll explain some of these concepts just so you can physically see what's going on and, you know, put a bit of sound to the words. Let's roll. Alrighty. So, a bit of practical examples, yeah? Let's do our progression we had originally 1, 4, 5 in the key of C. So that would be C, F, G, C. Easy work. Let's turn them into 7s, why not? Major 7, then we've got F major 7, G7, and back to C major 7. You can do them as bars, however you want to do it, whatever. Now, let's have a look at using our secondary dominant. So let's use it in the traditional fashion where we do the dominant 7 of the dominant 7. So the dominant 7 in this case is G. Going through the steps again, we got to go 5 up from G, G, A, B, C, D. That is our new dominant 7th chord that's going to precede the natural dominant 7th in that key. So our progression is now C major 7, F major 7, D7, G7, and C. It works, doesn't it, right? Strum them for that long, but you can kind of see there what I did is I halved the amount of strumming for the little secondary dominant change. I did 2 reps of the D7, 2 reps of the G7. Now, that's your traditional method, yeah? Now, let's do it on a different chord. So, I think we need the 2 chord to start. So, the new progression that we had was C, D minor, A minor, still had the G7. A little bit more harmony going on there, not as functional, not as typical. So, let's have a look at the progression if we did a secondary dominant on the 2 chord. Again, 2 is D minor. So, D, E, F, G, A. That's now our 7 chord. So, we go C, A7, D minor. Quite like it. It's quite nice, yeah? Again, C, A7, which is the secondary dominant of the chord that's going to follow, D minor. Now, I know that this A minor isn't going to sound as good now. I don't like it. Ready? C, A7, secondary, D minor, A minor, G7. I'm not complaining, but I don't know, it doesn't interest me. So what if we then double up? The next one we did was the secondary dominant of the A minor chord. So we went A minor, A, B, C, D, E. That's our secondary dominant. This is what I was talking about before. What if I go C, A7, D minor, E7. If I played the right chord. A minor, G7. Let's do that again without mistakes, huh? Bit better, and you can see it's elongating those chord progressions too. So I'm taking something pretty simple and I'm extending it with this secondary dominant tool. Now, one thing that I didn't speak about on the board is how to use this as a modulation tool, right? Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to play this on guitar first, and I'm going to jump back on the board to finish this off, and I'm going to explain what I just played. We'll just do a bit of a reverse engineering here. So if you do the traditional method, the 5-7 and the 5-7 chord, so let's go right back to our C, F, G, I did G7 and C. Secondary dominant, what we go is we go, okay, G, A, B, C, D, 7. So we're going to go C, F, D7, G7, C. Now, when we look at the chords in the key of C, we've got C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, that 5th will be the 7th, A minor, B diminished. Now, when we play that D7 chord, which is the secondary of the G, excuse me if you get lost here too, I'll jump it up on the board because I know I'm just talking shit here. So, if I do the secondary dominant of the G, I get the D7. As I said before, that chord doesn't work in the key of C. Why? It's got an F sharp. Now that F sharp doesn't work in the key of C because it has no sharps or flats in there. So, what key does have one sharp, and being that F sharp, is the key of G. So funnily enough, that's the chord that we're doing the secondary dominant of. So you can actually use the 5-7 to the 5-7 in that traditional dominant, secondary dominant way as a modulation tool. Check this out. So if I go C, F, G7, I'm gonna play them up here, it's annoying me there. I'll do the 7s as well. F major 7, G7, right? The G7 really wants to pull back because it's that, you know, that functional harmony, that perfect cadence there. Now, if we throw in, if I go to the G7, it makes me want to go back to that C. But what if we use the D7, because it's the 5th of the G key, like G, A, B, C, D, to actually resolve to G major. If I do that, I'm now in the key of G major and I can go through and do this new progression. So this can actually be a really good exercise, right? Check this out. So I'll go back to triad, so it's really easy to look at. No, you'd be right. I'll do 7s, screw it. So major 7, secondary dominant, resolve, new key, righto? Now let's go 1, 4, 5 in the key of G. So now what we'll get is we'll get G major or G major 7 if you want to do that. G major 7, right? Then we're going to get C major 7. Now, our normal 7 would be dominant 7th on the D, which we just figured out anyway. But what if we went, okay, well, let's do the secondary dominant of that. It's going to be A7, D, E, F, G, A. And then what does that resolve to? D major. I've now traveled through 3 keys, and that's just going sequentially clockwise on the circle of fifths. So let me just do it without talking. Secondary, secondary, see that? So I've moved a fair way, but your ears aren't jarring. They're not picking that up and going, "Oh, that sounds a bit harsh." Really, really smooth. So it's a great tool to use. I'm gonna whack this up on the board. Give me a second. Alrighty, welcome back to the whiteboard. Let's do it. Now, what I've written up here is your 3 keys. So I just traveled through them: C major, G major, D major, with their respective sharps and whatnot. I haven't written up the chords yet, but the chord order is always going to be the same. It's going to go major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. With the 7s, same concept, but the 5th. So all these are going to be dominant 7th chords. These ones are half diminished, but not talking about that today. So I'm just going to write up these. That's a G7, that's a D7, that's an A7. Now, what we did with our progression, right, is we did this. We went 1, 4, and then we went to the secondary dominant, right? So check this out. What we went is this is like, it's kind of like borrowing chords as well. It's a very similar concept when you see it like this. So we went 1, 4, 5. Then we went, okay, instead of playing 1, 4, 5 in the key, we're gonna go 1, 4, secondary dominant. And then we return back to here. But instead of just doing that and then going back to home, what we did is we went 1, 4, secondary dominant, and then we are now in a new key. And we did the same thing. We went 1 chord, 4 chord, secondary dominant, new key. That looks like a lot of arrows. I hope that made sense. Just a little thing to taper that off. So the chord progression remained the same, but we used it as a modulation tool to travel through keys. You can keep going through that circle of fifths clockwise using that method. You can go the other way with a slightly different take on it as well. But just start with that. This isn't a modulation video. There's so many different things and ways you can modulate with dominant chords themselves, let alone secondary dominants too. So just a little thing to throw in on the end on there, but I hope that makes sense. So yeah, leave me any comments down below if you have any questions about secondary dominants or anything relating to dominant chords, because if I see it, I'm happy to do a video on it. Yeah, so hopefully this clears this up, and if I post a new secondary dominant question, hopefully I get 100% right. But yeah, all right guys, have a good day. Hope that helps. Rock and roll.